I guess.
Jeff didn't contact you?
No.
Jeff, did you make it?
Don't see.
He's usually here by, yeah, here by now is what, you know.
Did we talk to him?
No. Why do we want to talk to him?
It is 7 PM and time to, on July 15th, 2025, and time to call this meeting of the Bristol Town Redevelopment Commission to order. We'll begin with roll call. Dean Renfro. Here. Kathy Burke.
Here.
Greg Tulsky.
Here.
Jeff Beachy is absent and Doug D. Smith is here. Continue around room. Clerk Treasurer Kathy Annelli.
Here.
Manager Mike Yoder.
Yes, here.
Representing our fine fire department, AJ Robertson. Town Marshal Steve Freed.
Here.
And Legal Counsel Alex Bowman.
Here.
Okay. Has everyone reviewed the agenda?
Yes.
Any additions, deletions, or corrections?
Nope.
Okay, if none, the agenda stands as published. Next. Meeting minutes. I know Kathy just put them out in our packet. Has everyone had a chance to look at them?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. With the one exception of the change to Mike Yoder's name, are there any other changes
Make a
necessary?
motion, we accept the minutes as corrected.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion by Kathy, second by Greg. Any further discussion? If not, we'll take a vote. Dean Renfro.
Yes.
Kathy Burke.
Yes.
Greg Tulsky.
Yes.
Doug D. Smith is a yes. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, our TIF annual presentation by Baker Tilly. It's all yours.
All right. Thanks for having me today. I'm Kyle Carlson with Baker Tilly. And I guess first, you guys have two materials. You should have two materials in front of you. You have a TIF annual presentation or PowerPoint, and then you have a TIF report that has a little bit more detail to it. We're going to go through the PowerPoint today, but there's a lot of good information in this report that you can look at a little bit more detail in how we come up with the TIF estimates and some of the estimated SEA1 deductions that have been added this year due to the legislative changes. So definitely keep that in mind.
So both of those are in your packet. So you have digital versions of them.
Yes, and we last year we prepared this report and it was just kind of like last year. This is an annual update on what your TIF areas look like and those estimated amounts. And this presentation is also a part of meeting statute. So once a year, you're supposed to meet, invite the overlapping units and talk about the long-term plan budget and any impact of the overlapping tax units of TIF. And so this is meeting that requirement as well. And as I go through this, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask questions. I know there's a lot of slides, so I'll try to move swiftly. So on slide 2, that's really just the redevelopment commission members and titles. And slide 3, that is the Baker Tilly team that prepared this work and also it operates as municipal advisors for the RDC and for the town, as you guys know. And then we have a team of utility folks here as well, so we're very well versed. So slide 4, every year I try to just give a recap on how TIF works. So at the creation of it, at the time that an area is created, there's a base assessed value set. That's basically the assessed value when the area was created. And that assessed value continues to be passed through the overlapping taxing units and isn't captured via TIF revenues. It's really the growth from that time over time, that green triangle there, that incremental assessed value, that AV times your tax rate divided by 100 is what calculates the TIF revenues that you bring in each area. And you can spend those TIF revenues in serving or benefiting the economic development area, as long as the project is a part of the project list in your economic development plan, and that plan can be amended really whenever you like. In your guys' case, as you'll see, you have one bigger economic development area that's consolidated, and then a separate Bristol East EDA. And then at some point, these areas expire, and they all have different expiration dates. And at that time, that assessed value is passed through to the overlapping taxing units. And generally, when that pass-through happens, that AV hits their tax base, so AV goes up, and then the tax rate drops down because your budget can only grow at about 4% per year. So generally, when the area ends, the tax rate, you'll see a decrease. And the next slide, on slide 5, this shows the various boundaries. So your guys' redevelopment district is coterminous with the town, and you actually have a debt limit to where you could issue property tax debt via the redevelopment district debt limit. Now, the town has issued GO bonds that are counted against that debt limit, but it's just important to know that. Now, you can just do what's called a lease bond to kind of get around the debt limit, so you're not really restricted to the debt limit. But hopefully that's useful information. So the boundaries outlined in red here is your economic development area. That's where the money can be spent from TIF. And then the allocation area is the box in orange. Your EDA can be bigger than your allocation area, but your allocation area can't be bigger than your EDA. The allocation area is each of the parcels that generate the TIF that then is received into the REC. On slide 6, these are just as you know, legislation changes all the time. So based on when an area is created, it has a different rule for when the expiration date is. This is a handy dandy chart for that. But we're going to go through each area individually, so we can move on to page 7. Slide 7 is a new slide due to legislation finished up in April, and there's a bunch of changes to how property tax is calculated. There is, at the front of that, there is 1% and 2% deductions and credits that are new and different than how they've operated in the past. So this is a chart showing you, well, first at the top, the 1% deductions, and that would be a 1% property. What I mean by that is there's circuit breaker, and certain properties are capped at 1% of your gross assessed value on what you can pay taxes on, and certain properties are 2% of gross assessed value. 1% would be your homes, and if for those homeowners out there, you have a supplemental, you have a standard deduction, a supplemental deduction if you look at your bill. That is changing over time. If you look at this chart, the standard deduction is going away, and the supplemental deduction is increasing from 37.5 to 66%. So in 2031, 66% of your assessed value that the assessor gives you, you don't have to pay taxes on. You just pay taxes on 33%. And then there's also a credit that the lesser of 300 or 10% of the net property tax bill is applied. So that's after circuit breakers. That's just a credit. Hey, I don't have to pay this dollar amount. Now, and there's some credits for 65 and over, disabled homeowner, and some other things that stack on each other. Now that's good for a homeowner, but not necessarily great for the town and the budget and receiving in money. So that's something to keep in mind. But hopefully this chart is useful. And then there's a 2% property deduction that's new. There hasn't been property deductions for basically 2% property would be farmland, apartments, and senior living facilities. And starting in 2025 and leading up to 2031, that is going to be 33% deducted as it's phased over time. So, for instance, an owner of an apartment complex in 2031, they're only going to pay taxes on 66% of their value and have 33% deduction. Similar to how an abatement works, right? So that it will impact the town as well, and we'll talk about some of those impacts throughout this. The good thing for the town of Bristol and for the redevelopment commission and for the TIF is Bristol is really commercial and industrial based, so there's not as many homes and apartments and 2% property as maybe some other towns and cities in Indiana, and so there's some solace in that. So the next page is really not TIF related, but everything's connected, right? So they have completely revamped the local income tax calculations and how that works. So what used to be certified shares, economic development, and public safety lit is going away in 2028. And then starting in 2028, the town has to implement annually a lit rate on its own. But since you guys are under the 3,500 population threshold, the county also has to sign off on that rate as part of the process. If you were above 3,500 population, they wouldn't have a say in the rate that you establish, except it can't be more than 1.2%. So it's not the greatest for small towns. And what this 1.2%, assuming you're able to adopt the maximum and the county approves it, when we're going through the comprehensive financial plan, I think maybe a few weeks, where our team is gonna have an estimate for what, that 1.2% lit can generate for you. I know Mike has already kind of looked at it as well, but
Another interesting thing I found as I was looking through this is that 0.4% that the county will do for fire protection and EMS. If our fire department petitions, the county has to share that, portion of that increment with them.
Oh,
It has to, if all they have to do is petition, they have to present their budget and all the materials. That's the way I read it.
yeah, I'd have to confirm on that.
But
But
I'll confirm, I read it three
Yes.
times, read
Well,
the same way all 3 times.
Yeah.
It was unusual in that respect, that all they had to do was petition and the county was required to share that. Yeah.
sounds good.
I can follow up on that for sure.
Yeah.
And the lit PTRC is going away. That's one other thing beginning in 2028, and that's a property tax relief credit that is used in various counties at different levels. All right, so moving into each area, you guys have your consolidated economic development area, and various allocations fall within that EDA, and you can see a list on this title page. And then on slide 10, you can see the history of the creation of all of the allocation areas within this EDA, with the most recent being the AWT allocation area in 2024. And then on slide 11, while it's small, the font on it is small. If you look real closely, you can see allocation areas marked to kind of give you an idea of where each allocation area sits within the EDA. This was created using the GIS tool online, so hopefully that's helpful. I know there was a suggestion last year to show more maps, so we tried to do that this year.
So these are each of the tip areas.
Yes, and then the full outside border is the economic development area.
Right,
that each
right.
area is in, yeah. Just to give you an idea of where in the town they sit.
Cool.
So on slide 12, this is the South State Road 15 allocation area. It was created in 2008 and it expires in 2038. The estimated TIF in 2024 was just over 1.4 million, and you guys collected just over 1.3 million. I have to look into why the collections seem a little low. It's probably because of delinquent property tax payments, and probably see higher in the next year as those come in late. But we'll continue to monitor that. You'd like to see that as close to the estimate as possible. In pay 25, that's estimated to increase up to 1.659 million. So that's part way because the tax rate increased a little bit year to year, and then the AV was up 9 million, to give some context.
South State. Okay.
And the detailed time behind all of these estimates is in the report, so if you get really curious, go to that and check that out. So the next slide, slide 13, the outstanding obligations. So there's 2 obligations that are being paid from the South State TIF. The general revenues of 2021, those were issued in 2.1 million, and there's 1.5 million outstanding. The purpose was to refinance the town's municipal complex loan, and the final maturity is August of 2031. It's callable any date upon 30 days notice, and it's payable from annual appropriations of the town, but including general fund. But you guys are using the State Road 15 TIF fund to pay those payments currently. And then there's an interlocal agreement for road funding that you guys are getting real close to paying off. It was issued at 3 million and about 275,000 outstanding. Purpose is to finance the road projects in the allocation area. And the estimated final maturity, as I said, the last payment should be January of 26. And Mike's vetted that, so. Yeah. Security as the bonds are payable from South State Road 15 revenues in the amount of $400,000 annually per year, and the rate is 3.5% currently. But like I said, it's almost paid off. So on slide 14, it'll just show you the South State Road revenues in the blue shaded area compared to the debt payments for the 21 bonds and the interlocal agreement. So there's obviously a lot of excess of TIF that you're seeing there, but you guys are using that for other projects and for fire and things that we'll talk about on the cash flow slide. And then slide 15, your North State Road 15 allocation area was created in 2008, expires in 2033. Doesn't bring in a lot of revenue, but we do see an increase from 24 to 25 from about 2,100 to 7,800. So that's good to see the AV went up a little bit. Slide 16, the Seahawk allocation area was created in 21, expires in 2046. Which is 25 years from when the bonds were issued. You guys have Seahawk bonds that we're going to talk about on the next page. It captures real and personal property. And personal property is reported by the MJB Wood and will file to the county, and then they pay taxes on like the equipment they have in their building. In 2024, we estimated 815,000 in TIF. You guys received 834,000. We estimate 961,000 in 2025. The AAV increased about just over 5 million. That led to that increase from year to year. You guys are 80% of the real property tax increment and 100% of the personal property tax increment is pledged to the repayment of the bonds, which we're going to talk about on the next slide. So the 2021 Seahawks bonds were issued in the amount of over 7 million, and there's about 6.5 million outstanding. Purpose was incentive to the developer for infrastructure. And the final maturity is August 1st, 2034. But currently, based off of what the information we have, the estimate is that the payoff will happen actually a year earlier in 2033, because once you pay off that 7.1 million, then it stops, and then the rest of that tip comes to the RDC. Security on the bonds, like I said, is 80% from the real, and then 100% of what they pay in personal property taxes. So on the next slide, this will show you the revenue to debt. The light blue is the revenue, and there's about 182,000 of excess that you guys are keeping from the real property. And then this is only going through 2034, so when the bonds expire, then you keep the full amount to use on projects. On page 19, the Belmont area was created in 2022. It expires 25 years after the first obligation is incurred, so it doesn't really have an expiration date yet. It's finally fully built out for assessment purposes and collection purposes. So in 2024, you guys were estimated to collect 137,000, and that's what you collected. And in 2025, after the building is fully assessed now, it's going to bring in 368,000 estimated. Now, they do have an abatement that they haven't done the correct things for the last couple of years. So in the report, you'll notice as we go past 2025, we do assume that just in case that if they file that abatement, this number could come down because they're just not reporting the information they need to.
Yeah.
And I probably should have said this, like we're just showing 24 and 25 on here until we get to the cash flow. The report goes all the way through 2031. And that'll show you some of the SCA1 deductions from those deduction changes over time phasing in. Like I said, it's not very material for the town just because there's not a lot of homes and apartments in the TIF. It's mostly commercial and industrial, but you will see that. So on slide 20, this is the rail park area, created in 2022 and expires 25 years from an obligation. The estimated TIF in 24 was 117,000, and that's what you collected. Pay 25. You're estimated to collect 247,000. In 2026, the assessment the estimate is even higher, as you'll see in the report, because this one is just finishing up or finished up in 2024 for January 1, 25, pay 26. So this 247,000 will be much higher in 2026. And slide 21, this is the new AWT allocation area created in 2024 and expires 25 years from the issuance. There's no TIF collected as the project will be built, but we wanted to add that to the slide deck. And so the next slide, 22, is probably the most important slide. It kind of shows everything that we've talked about before this, and it shows the estimated TIF for each area. You'll see the obligations backed out until you get all the way down to the middle that says estimated TIF remaining. And that takes into account the account balances at the beginning of the year. And then basically that estimated TIF remaining after obligations. And then goes down and takes into account the project expenditures towards the bottom there and shows you what the estimated TIF remaining would be based on the projects. The next slide will kind of give you a breakdown of that estimated project expenditures. That shows from about 1.5 to 800,000 in those years. So this gives you an idea of, with the current projects that are planned, what is our balance going to do over time? And that tells you what your ability is to do other projects and fund other things. On slide 23, that's the list of the projects. And this, we worked with Mike to put this together. And the biggest expense here is really the fire protection cost that you guys know of, and it's split between this EDA and then the Bristol East. So you'll see that a little bit later in the presentation, because that contract is, I believe, 920,025. That's being paid in TIF. So this gives you a summary of the projects. And like I said, you know, it looks light going forward because you're going to fill that in with other projects. And then the next EDA and allocation area is the Bristol East, which you can see a map on slide 25. It's just industrial property. And on slide 26, the area was created in 2014, expires in 2039. Estimated to bring in 515,024, that's what's brought in. For pay 25, estimated to bring in 598,000. The AV went up a little bit due to that increase. Part of that may have been some of the abatement roll-off, tax abatement roll-off. Slide 27, you can see kind of the cash flow for this area. So the allocation account balance was 980,000 at the beginning of the year. And the very top there shows you the estimated revenues through 2039 through 2029. And then shows the estimated expenditures, which are on the next page. Next page shows you some projects that are being funded or planned to be funded from Bristol East. There's the rest of that fire protection contract cost, which was 600,000 for 2020 for Bristol East and then 320 for South. But then going forward, we've split it 50-50 across the two, which is subject to change based on how you guys would like to spend, you know, between the two areas. And then next area is GGT, is the last area. And it's created in 2019, expires in 2044. And there was 343,000 collected when 270 was estimated. And that's because last year there was delinquent tax payments. And then those were made up in this collections. So that's why it came in more. And then for pay 25, estimating 285,000, slight increase year to year. And then the next slide just shows the obligation for GGT. So 85% of that TIF revenue is pledged to a reimbursement agreement. And that reimbursement agreement either ends when it's paid off or in 2034. In the last section, because it's the third requirement of this presentation, we got to talk a little bit about the impacts. So the slide 33 just shows all the overlapping taxing units. We were able to estimate SCA1 impacts to the TIF based on the assessed value deductions. Part of it is knowing what's going to happen with the tax rate going forward. As you can imagine, that's really hard to estimate because it includes all of the units. So we have to look at the county, school, township, and then also factor in that they may be issuing property tax debt and all these things to really estimate what the tax rate would be. And for the TIF purposes, that's according to statute, you're not really supposed to benefit if the tax rate goes up. Because if assessed values go down from SCA1, then likely the tax rate would go up because they operate adversely. But there's this neutralization process that's supposed to happen that we're waiting to see the DOJ roll that out. That says the RDC can't really benefit, or the TIF can't benefit from the tax rate going up. So while the impacts are limited within the TIF on the decrease, there's not really an upside based on if you read the statute. Because even if there's a tax rate increase, you can't really capture it. So next slide 34, the impacts of the TIF. This is just the above forecast, just saying, like for example, the Seahawk area and the Seahawk bonds. It's the idea that if the increased assessed value from new developments would not occur but for the TIF incentives, then it cannot be lost with other units. So when that deal was negotiated and and the money's paid back to the developer after they pay their property taxes, it's not really lost if that was part of the reason that they decided to locate here and build here. It was kind of an incentive tool that was used to also have it built here. And then really TIF just postpones adding the new assessed value because there will be an expiration date. And it postpones the reduction in tax rates, like I said, and then a little bit of increased revenues to cumulative funds would go up if there weren't TIF or if the TIF went away. But those funds are limited. Most funds are capped at that 4% growth. Can't increase more than that. On slide 35, it's really just talking about a study done by Larry DeBoer from Purdue in 2016. I think we maybe need to get a more updated slide or getting a little bit far from that date. But he's just saying there's no loss of shifting if the but-for test is satisfied. There's no loss of shifting if there are no other means to fund the incentives or infrastructure besides TIF. You know, for instance, having to spend money for fire protection. Like TIF is really allowing you to do that, where if it was captured in your budget, you really wouldn't be able to capture it at that level because you're limited on how much that could grow each year. So. Then on slide 36, school funding and that school educational expenses are funded by the state. State funding is based on student enrollment. And just explaining some of the ways you can work with the school. You can do various training programs like training equipment, computers and things, and kind of all kinds of programs that maybe career programs or school programs. You know, if you wanted to get creative with how you work with the school, you have to let the attorney scrub it and make sure that you're able to spend it that way. But I'm sure you could. And then one thing is if you have a school referendum, that really benefits the TIF because it's not captured by the TIF. So any increase in value because of the TIF tool helps referendum returns. So.
Remember that term, scrub it.
Yeah. And then the last slide is just a rah-rah slide, like thank you guys for listening and saying that all the units are supposed to work together. TIF is a really powerful tool and you're really getting that dollar for dollar return to be able to use that money in ways that you should be able to. And as long as you use it and plan correctly, then it's a good tool.
All right,
Sorry that was long-winded, but really good information.
very informational. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? No? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the RDC meeting.
I'll second. Motion by Dean, second by Doug. All in favor?
I
Okay, let's read about it.
Jane, are you? Should I say?
You can read it.
Not sure I would.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't want you here, but.
Yeah.
hey,
Thanks for having me and a bit of a drive home. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
thank you.
We want to like frame it or something. See you guys.
Thank
Thank
Safe
you.
driving.
Yeah, thank you.
Kathy, do you need any additional time?
I'm waiting on my computer.
Okay. Let me know.
Ready when you are.
All right. It is 7:29 on July 15th, 2025. Time to bring this town council work session meeting to order. First item on the agenda, pledge of allegiance. Steve, would you like to lead us tonight?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will start with roll call. Team Renfro. Here. Kathy Burke.
Here,
Greg Tuholsky.
Here.
Jeff Beachy is absent this evening, and Doug D. Smith is here. Continuing around the room, Clerk Treasurer Kathy Antonelli.
Present.
Town Manager Mike Yoder.
Here,
Representing the Fire Department, AJ Robertson.
and.
And Jeff. Town Marshal Steve Green.
Here.
And Legal Counsel Alex Bowman.
here,
All right, approval of agenda. Has everyone been able to review it?
Yes,
Yes.
Any changes necessary? No? If not, the agenda stands as published. And we'll get right into reports. Baker Tilly with our review.
All right,
Anxiously awaiting.
with the follow up with from Kyle there, and hopefully have good news today. Well, I do have good news today,
All
not
right.
hopefully anymore, so. All right, I am Ian Stahl. There's a lot of familiar faces here, but Ian Stahl, Baker Tilly, out of our Mishawaka office, manager there. I have Brent here, who's a consultant with us, and he is the brains behind all the reporting, so if there's any questions, he's the guy to answer.
All right,
All right, so we'll start with sewer, let me give you that, and I'll try to keep it high level. I know we just went through a 30-minute presentation, so I'll save you guys all some time. A lot of good news, so shouldn't be many comments here, but kind of taking a step back, high level. Each year, we met with Mike, Kathy, and Jill last year, and our municipal side of things to discuss some annual reporting in response to our large debt issuances we had in 2024. So with that reporting each year in the first quarter, typically of each year, what we'll do is go over the historical financials of the utilities and then put together a 5-year kind of forecast or estimated receipts and disbursements and fund balances to measure the applicability of our current rates and where we're heading in the near-term future, and whether we're still meeting those 125% debt service coverage requirements as part of the bonds. And just making sure our rates are sufficient and updates to our capital plans, reevaluating everything each year to just make sure we're in good standing, to put it in short. So that is what we have done this year, and it's the first year of this reporting. And fortunately, in the first year of this reporting, we already are seeing some of the benefits of doing this type of reporting in terms of some rate delayment and a little bit of a decrease on the sewer side of things. So starting with sewer, and I'm happy to go through any of the historical information if anybody would like me to, but I'd like to focus on kind of where that 5-year outlook looks, which is really driving what this rate review is. So this report does have I like to call it 3 facets. It's your where have you been, where are you at, and where are you heading. So kind of a historical, a present day being the most recent 12-year period, and where are we heading, so the 5-year forecast of things. So starting out with sewer here, I know it'll look like we're skipping a lot of pages, and we are, but going forward to page 6 in your packet is where we start that 5-year forward projection. So in our rates and what we looked at as far as a 5-year projection, we actually started with 2023 actuals for financials. 2024 wasn't the best period to be normalized, given just the changes in rates and just getting adjusted to some of the billing in general. So 23, which we utilized for our cost of service, that increased these rates for our basis point for moving forward. So on page 6 here on the sewer report, you can see in table 8, we've taken a look at your estimated receipts. So our 5-year period is 25.
table,
Sorry, page 6, Mike.
it's this one.
well, page 6 in mine is this.
Oh, sorry, that's PDF page. Yeah, keep on going down. We should have page
11.
numbers at the very
Oh,
bottom of each
there we
one.
go.
Sorry, not to provide any confusion there, Mike.
But.
Perfect.
Okay.
There we go.
I didn't think I was tracking with what you were saying. So.
That's all right. So page 6 is kind of where we start to look at that 5-year forecast. So we take into effect all of your operating receipts and non-operating receipts. So you can see here in table 8, we're showing your 2024 actual receipts, which are about 30 million in total, which is very inflated. Don't expect $30 million coming in every year. That was bond proceeds of 28.2 million. So not to give too much hope on that front of things, but we've shown your 2024 actuals, and then we're looking at this 5-year estimated or forecasted period, if you will, for 25 to 29. So in 25, you can see there, we're estimating you guys to be around 2.1 million in revenue, total revenue, so non-operating included. And then as part of the rate increases that we are proposing and adjusting here, we're going to jump up to 2.46 million in 26, and then so on and so forth. 27 being the first year that we reach that full rate increase for the sewer utility, so that phase 3 of the rate increase. Moving down to table 9, just taking into effect all of our operating disbursements and using 3% inflationary measures for each of the 5-year forecasting periods of 25 to 29. 3% is a typical inflationary amount that we use just as a conservative measure to make sure we're tracking with all of our operating disbursements in that 5-year period. Some years obviously can be a little bit more. I know COVID was certainly a year we were trending around that 4 to 5% mark, but 3% is a standard year that we like to utilize. Moving down to page 7, my PDF page 12 where you are. There we go. Got it. Just taking into effect what the next 5 years looks like for your debt service. So obviously in 24 there, we're showing the band payoff. We obviously issued a band as part of the water and sewer bonds and had to make that payment back. So that's your 24 payment, and then our bond principal and interest payments picked up in 2025 through 29. There are annual amounts for the debt service that we just issued on the 24 bonds. Moving down to table 11, this is just a capital plan for the next 5 years. So a lot of this is really just related to the bond that we issued in the bond funded project. We do have an allowance for capital improvements for 25 to 29 that we had built into the cost of service and built into the rates that'll essentially give an allowance for the utility to continue to make any capital improvements in a given year. So to account for any normal capital improvements that isn't a $28 million. So looking down at table 12, so what this tells us, and this is ultimately what your cash flow tells us at the end of the period. So in 2025, this next 5-year forecasting period. So to start off, you can see there a very large decrease in 2025 in cash, but really that isn't to scare you. It's all spending down the bond proceeds that you received in 24. So really a net figure there at the end of the day. And then ultimately in 26 to 29, you start seeing more of those cash flows end up. So a positive cash flow in each of those years, which is obviously a great thing to see when we're not seeing anything in the red. So moving forward to page 8, just a quick graphic here of your estimated fund balances. So all your fund balances, your operation and maintenance, your improvement funds, DSR, BNI, so on and so forth, versus where we typically recommend those fund balances need to be. So when I say recommend, obviously we have required versus recommended reserves. Required reserves being your O&M fund needs to maintain 2 months worth of your budget. You have your DSR balances that we know we need to hit or fund over the 5-year period per the bond ordinance. We have our BNI that are required, and then when I say recommended, it's adding in your depreciation or improvement fund for capital to make sure we're at least holding in a certain balance for your improvement fund based on a 5-year average. So what this tells us, the fund balances at the end of each of these 5-year forecasting periods and 24, is that this blue line here is where our fund balances are currently at in 24 and where we anticipate them to end up for the next 5 years versus the recommended. In each of those years, we can see that we are maintaining our fund balance and then some, which is always good because we have to make sure we're hitting those fund balances and debt service coverage requirements. So a great outlook there. So I will note too that where this ends up, and we'll move to page 13 here. So all of this taken into effect here for sewer was, and here's the good news. So this was, we're obviously gonna need a rate increase for phase two still, so, and I know Alex has prepared this. But in May or in August of 2025, we still need a phase two increase, but the good news is that that increase can actually be reduced of roughly 10% in phase two. So not quite the full increase that we technically needed at phase two and anticipated. So I put together a bill impact briefly here that'll kind of give some guidance to what your monthly rates would look like. So currently, right now, I'll use a typical user, which is about 4,000 gallons, 5/8 inch meter. We are currently at $53.72 for the sewer utility. What we anticipate with the reduced increase for phase two is being around $59. So about a $6 increase, or $5.50 is the technical number for that. What that compares to in our current ordinance that was initially anticipated to be adopted in phase two is we were supposed to be around $66 for a typical user. So that's about a $7 decrease in phase two alone that we can incorporate. So kind of stave off and get some reprieve for this phase two to allow for more budgeting time. And then ultimately for phase three, we're still going to, which will happen in May of 2026 as anticipated. We'll still have that final increase, or the phase three increase of about 19%, to get to about $70.44 for a typical user. So what that number is it's about 2% lower. A lot of numbers I'm throwing at you, but it's about 2% lower than the initial increase that we anticipated in the full effect of phase three when we went to the board council last year to do this rate increase. So ultimately, we have a stepped approach that is a little bit more stepped than anticipated. So about a 10% reduction of this phase two, allow for a year until we hit May of 2026, or 9 months. And then ultimately hit that phase three that's about 2% lower than where we anticipated at. So I say that with the asterisk there too, that we will be doing this annual reporting at the beginning, first quarter of next year. So if we get some new meter readings and we have some better revenues, et cetera, there's a possibility that this gets reevaluated next year, and there's even more good news. So as part of our annual reporting, we'll continue to work with Mike, Jill, Kathy to monitor where our revenues are, where our expenses are going, and continue to relay good news and bad news, but hopefully continued good news as revenues increase. And I know Mike and Jill and Kathy, we've been working on some meter readings, is that correct? Or some meter replacements, so hopefully get some more data on that and can continue to evaluate. Hopefully that rate increase doesn't need to go into the full effect of phase three.
We really need to find a high water usage new commercial development. Whatever that is,
I would hope.
more usage,
Water per more anytime.
water parks. Okay.
More penalties.
Yeah, and that's the big point of doing this reporting is you have those large users come in and we start to see those usage trends and pick up in revenue. Obviously, that means reevaluation to what does this do to our user rates in general. So there's it's been done. I know we just went in front of Middlebury a few months ago, and they were actually able to do a similar approach. So things can change with expenses. Obviously, they can go up, but they can also go down. So it's always good to be tracking this as well, making sure we're tracking through those decreases as well if it's possible.
And to be fair, we could reduce expenses significantly. Tim just told me today that the timing could have been better on both water and the sewer side, treatment plant side. Things are wearing out fast. So we have relatively high expenses for repairs right now and overtime. And I don't know if that makes a major impact on the rate, but once the new wastewater treatment plant is up and going, and once we have the new water tower operational, that's going to save us some operational costs, is what it looks like right now. I don't know if it's enough to lower the rate increase in phase three, but we can hope it'll help some.
Every little bit helps.
I am, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, and we'll continue to monitor that. Hopefully that comes up fruitful. All right, so water, I'll tell you now, it's gonna be the same setup as the sewer report. It's a little bit less in detail with the phases, so hopefully I don't get too confusing on it. So Mike, we'll start on page 6 again
That this one?
of the water report. No, I think one more down. Oh, I lied,
One
two more
more.
down.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's-
okay.
There we go. All right, so same setup as our sewer report. We looked at the water utility, high level, and the details, everything in between. And have ultimately derived a 5-year forecast of where we see the utility ending up based on those 23 actual financials for revenues and then your 24 actuals for your operating and non-operating disbursements. So looking at table 8 here, similar approach to sewer, taking your, for 2025 operating receipts, we took your 2023 actuals that we utilized as part of the cost of service for your operating receipts and then built off of those. So essentially taking rate increases into effect here. So in 2025, I will point out a little bit earlier than I pointed this out in sewer, is we are currently looking at your 2025 number as not incorporating a rate increase other than your full year of the phase 1 being in effect. So what we've been able to do, and we'll show this later in the report, but it comes into play here as well, is actually delay that phase 2 increase till May of 2026. So to be in line with that third increase for sewer. So water is in a pretty good spot considering the revenues and your fund balances and meeting your requirements as well as your debt service coverage. We took all that into effect. And ultimately, water can delay that second phase, so it doesn't need to happen now. It can happen in May of 2026 with that last phase of the sewer increase. So allow for some more time for residents to have that reprieve or continue to budget. But water, I know, was a little bit less of an increase, but still some help there as far as delaying that rate increase if council so chooses. So moving down here into table 9, looking at your estimated operating disbursements, the utility for 2024 and 2025 was actually operating very well in terms of a budget to actual perspective. So I had it in my notes. In our cost of service in 2025, we actually anticipated about $50,000 higher of operating disbursements in 25, but the utility has done very well in 24 and 23. That our estimates from that cost of service were actually higher than what was anticipated. So 24 really worked with underneath the budget, so didn't even come, we were about 50,000 less than the budget, which is obviously great to see and helps in terms of rates. So 26 on is just taking that 25 plus your inflationary increases to account for any inflation in the market. Moving on to page 7 here, just a quick couple schedules on your debt service. So really just tracking through your band payoff as well as 25 to 29 includes the principal and interest payments that you have on the bonds that were issued, the $15.7 million bonds we issued in 24. Your capital in table 11 accounts for all the bond funded project. So taking that into effect in 25, and then also similar to sewer, building in a capital allowance for your typical annual improvements that you would have at the utility, which we built into the cost of service as well. Table 12 here ultimately is your cash flow. So as you can see there, again, in 25 and 24, they offset each other just because we receive bond proceeds and then you spend down bond proceeds. So really a net there. 26 through 29 obviously anticipates positive cash flows, as you can see. Again, always a great thing to see, especially with meeting debt service coverage requirements. And if there is any unforeseen repairs or maintenance that we obviously see a lot at our utilities with aged infrastructure, a nice thing to have. So moving forward onto page 8, another schedule here, table 13 shows fund balances versus recommended reserves. So in 2024 through 29, we're anticipating a buildup of fund balances compared to your recommended reserves, which is always a very welcome sight. Again, in 2026, when we're looking at this report, if those continue to climb, maybe there's more good news as far as a rate decrease, or adjusting that rate. But want to make sure we get another year of normalization of revenue to make that determination. But ultimately, a healthy balance in the water utility as we grow towards 2029. And then we can look at the rates that is on page. We have a lot of debt service schedules if anybody wants to verify and look through all the amortization schedules and go through all that again. But page 13, Mike, I think you're actually, this is a good page we can take a look at. So page 14 that Mike has up on the screen is ultimately showing what those combined rates are. Water is in blue and sewer is in red. So phase 2, where we're currently at today, shows no change in your water rates, so the delay of water rates until next year. And then your second phase of sewer rates. So that combined rate as of August will look about $96 for both water and sewer. So I know that sewer rate might seem a little bit high, and it's certainly not, I won't say low. I just will give some reference to some other communities. We're seeing a lot of smaller population size communities in that $100 range for sewer. I know I've done a couple of projects where we're seeing an average user around that $90 to $100 mark. So it's ever changing utility, and projects are not getting cheaper. So certainly just some food for thought in terms of that rate, but ultimately in that second phase after this August increase if council so chooses to push forward is about $96 for a combined bill of water and sewer. And then phase 3, starting in May of 2026, we're looking around $114 with that second phase of water taking effect, as well as that third phase of sewer taking effect to get to your ultimate rates. So hopefully some good news. Obviously, there's still some rate increases in there, but some delayed rate increases given where funds are. And again, I know I harped on this a million times, but looking at this in Q1 of 2026 as well as we do, will shed a little bit more light in terms of more potential decreases, or just a holistic look at the utility once again to make sure that everything is shaping up to where we estimate it to be. So.
All right,
Thank you very
Perfect.
much.
thank you very much. Okay. You're up.
Yes, so building off of Ian's work and the work of Baker Tilly, prepared for first reading this evening, ordinance number 2025-08-07-14, which is an ordinance of the town of Bristol, Indiana, amending chapters 51 and 52 of the town code of ordinances relating to water and sewer utility rates. The reports that we've just been through essentially boil down to, for practical purposes for the council's consideration, amendments to the current sewer and water rate ordinance to delay the increase in water rates until May of 2026, so May 1st of 2026. Currently, that rate is scheduled to occur August 1 this year, some couple of weeks. The change also addresses the 10% decrease in rates for to be effective for sewer, effective August 1, and then the phase 2, and then the phase 3 increase in May of 2026 at that slightly reduced rate as well. So that's what the ordinance contemplates. I've tried to describe a bit of the procedural history of how we got here, so that that's clear in the recitals of the ordinance. As council will recall, these rates were originally set back in April of 24, April of last year, and then it was revisited in April of this year to delay the initial rate increase until August 1, and now with the additional data available from Baker Tilly, I think if the council is amenable, that the rates may be further delayed for water and decreased for sewer. probably the two points in here in this ordinance that I think are particularly important in addition to the rate concept here. Is one, it prepared this to be retroactive to July 1 of 2025. So that because of the hearing process that the council will have to entertain in order to have remonstrators come before the council and be heard, this won't be ripe for consideration until the August 7th town council meeting, which would be after that August 1 rate would go into effect. So the language here expressly is retroactive to July 1, so that effectively that August 1 increase that's currently on the books wouldn't occur. If that makes sense.
I have a question.
Sure.
If we do on first reading tonight, then Thursday we'll do second.
No,
And
right. This because this is a utility rate, the town's utility rate,
Yeah.
it requires the notice and public hearing
That's
process.
true.
And so with the publication, we couldn't get it any earlier. If we got the notice to the papers tomorrow, which we will, probably still not gonna be published until Monday of next week,
I
and
agree.
then there's a 10-day. And so,
I forgot about the publishing
Yeah.
necessary.
so that's how it will, so it'll come up for second reading on the 7th. But I think this statute, and I think because of the nature of this ordinance, what it seeks to regulate, and because it's beneficial to ratepayers, I think it's appropriate for retroactive application. There isn't a statutory prohibition on retroactive application for this purpose. So I prepared it for the council's benefit, and I think for the ratepayers' benefit as well. So that's point one, but then point two, section 10 of the proposed ordinance includes the kind of a catch-all that to the extent there are already rates that are paid between August 1st and August 7th when this is adopted, or God forbid, there's a scenario where the hearing needs to be continued and continued on to the next date. If there are rates paid in excess of what would be the effective rate, then a credit can be applied to a ratepayer's account. That's kind of the concept.
Will you be coming to do that?
No, that's why I
That's a.
tried to do it as discreetly as possible.
Next grade, right?
But I think that's to have that in there. But mostly what I think it does is it empowers the clerk treasurer in that role to the extent a ratepayer comes in and says, "Hey, I paid $52, but the rate is $50. Give me my $2 back."
Mhm.
This ordinance would empower the clerk treasurer to credit that account or provide that refund
Reflect,
without further authorization or need to go before the council.
did you say previously a decrease in sewer?
I'm sorry.
I know this was several minutes ago. Sorry.
That's not reflected here. Whatever he said, it's not in this.
Okay.
This one reflects an increase.
Oh, well, yeah, sorry, yes, a decrease from what is currently in the ordinance, what would be proposed for phase 2 and phase 3.
It's 10% less than what was proposed to be.
Yes.
Well,
I don't know.
more correctly, 10% less than what the current ordinance is.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so with the adoption of this, August 1, the rate that will go into effect will be 10% less than the rate that is currently scheduled to go into effect August 1.
I make a motion, we approve on first reading ordinance number 2025-8-07-14, to which delays any rate increases until May of next year in the sewer and water, correct?
It's close. I would, my
Well,
recommendation.
I was listening to everything you said.
Very good. My recommendation would be to amend the motion to advance this ordinance to second.
Advance it to second reading, okay. Is that all I made a mistake?
Yep.
Well, cool.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Kathy, second by Dean. Any further discussion? If not, we'll take a vote. Dean Renfro,
Yes.
Kathy Burke,
Yes.
Greg Tuholski.
Yes.
And Doug D. Smith is a yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, council. We'll have the notice of that hearing prepared and sent to the papers tomorrow for publication.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda,
Well,
What
there
time?
is one other issue, the 300-foot connection mandate, which we could delay to another meeting.
We can, if you want, I can introduce the concept at least. There's at least 2 properties in the town, I believe it's.
Yeah, I think. There are more than 2?
Talking about
Just
ones
2.
on County Road 8.
Uh, yeah, it's not 8, it's
23 and
23.
Well, yeah, okay.
So the scope of the problem is, or the scope of the matter to be addressed. There are 2 properties within the town limits that are on septic. I don't believe there's any indication that the septic has failed or isn't working or anything like that, but suffice to say, the town has sewer facilities that are within 300 feet of the property owner's property line. The town has an ordinance, which is in chapter 52.004 sub H, that basically says that if there is a property owner within the town that's within 300 feet of the sewer lateral, they can be mandated to connect. And the town can send a notice, and they have 90 days to connect. That's the ordinance, and that's point blank in that regard. In order to make that property owner connect, there's that notice provision, and that would take an action of probably appropriate for the town council to make that directive if the council's inclined. Now, the question that's come before, of course, the connection to sewer can be a costly venture. And I don't know if this is an express request of the property owners or if it's been an idea that's contemplated, but essentially can you let me stay on septic for a little longer, I guess is.
Well, I think, isn't one of these properties just put in a new septic like last year? It was more than 300 feet from the road, so we said, or somebody said, I said, just put it in.
Yeah, it's a new construction.
Yeah, it's already installed now, correct. So it's a large property, the house is set way back, and for whatever reason, they needed to install a new septic, not because theirs was failing, but for the changes on their site. So it'd be a very expensive connection, and somehow we came to the conclusion that they would be granted a variance to this requirement to connect, because they have plenty of land.
And so which makes sense, right? It makes all the sense. Much is the case where sometimes the practicality, the common sense aspect of it flies in the face of what the ordinance says. And of course, there are a number of benefits to being connected to a municipal sewer system. But that would be a cost generally is attributable to the property owner. And so especially since there's a lot of property and there's a new septic system and there's no foul play here. This is kind of the reality. So the thought would be, I mean, to bring that issue to council's attention. A couple of potential remedies. When I look at the ordinance, much like some of the other ordinances that the council has reviewed, there isn't really a variance procedure that's here to otherwise regulate what that process would look like to request to stay on a septic and not have to connect to the municipal utility. Since we've identified that there's something here that can be done, my recommendation would be to, again, if the council's inclined, to implement a process whereby a landowner, like someone in this situation, is able to seek a variance from that with the council's permission, with some conditions, particularly that pertain to the status of the septic system. There's a procedure that's followed for regional water and sewer districts that, otherwise operate sewer districts outside of incorporated boundaries, where if there's a sewer main that's within 300 feet of the property line, those property owners can be exempted from the requirement to connect, but they have to demonstrate that the health department's inspecting the septic and the septic is otherwise in good condition. You don't, the town probably doesn't want to be in the business of allowing a property owner to have a septic system exist, fail, be replaced, and now we're 40 years down the road and there's municipal sewer that's right there. So there's a process that falls under a different statutory scheme that I think the town could pick up and implement quite easily into its code of ordinances to address this, again, very limited circumstance. But I think both to the benefit of the town, and the health considerations and the property owner, that, this is a unique situation, and I'm not inclined to advise you that you can resolve to, or by resolution, allow it to continue. That would be my.
I'm surprised the builder didn't know,
Oh, everybody knew.
but they put in a septic anyway.
No, somehow we approved that. I thought I brought it to the council, but maybe
I've never.
I didn't. So no, they were told by the county, you had to connect to the town. So I don't know how far off the road this was. It was well over 300. And the septic wasn't failing. He just had to move it. That's all he was doing. So we were going to force this man to spend thousands of dollars, measured with probably 4 zeros, just because he was remodeling his house. The soils are perfect for septic. If he was not in the town, this was. So we interpreted as he was more than 300 feet away from the sewer itself, not
His property
Property
line
line.
was 300 feet from the sewer?
No.
Just the house.
his house.
It's
Yeah,
that
so the property went to the road, so he was within
Right.
10 feet.
Yeah. So it's a matter of just being common sense and practical. And he's not, if he wasn't remodeling his house, the septic would be there right now, just as it is now. So for the fact that it's remodeling the house, adding on, he needed to move his septic, we were gonna incur, I don't know, how many thousands of dollars? Do you remember, did he have a quote?
He
Like,
might have, I just don't remember. what
Yeah.
it was.
that's a long ways to, and I'm not even sure he could gravity flow it there, maybe, I don't know. So, going forward, we want to make this something that there is an official procedure in place that you guys can weigh in on.
Yeah,
Well, I
I would
know,
like to wade in on it the
I
first
was
time.
a young town manager at the time.
Oh, when have you been?
Again, alternatively, the town's ordinance says, it references the director of the public utility, sends a notice and the order to connect is given, and the property owner, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, it's black and white, it's you connect, and if you refuse or you decline,
Well,
then
if they moved
there's
it,
a
it's
judicial
not
function
new.
involved.
If they
Sure,
didn't put in,
I'd buy
I mean, if they didn't put in all new, a septic container, then moving it was not new. It's not a new thing,
If
right?
you say so.
I mean, they
I'm
might have a
asking.
leach field, but I'm sure they would tank.
I mean, they'll move the tank, but that doesn't mean that the tank is new.
Could be.
You don't know?
All I know is there's a working septic system on a very large lot on sandy soil, and it's working perfectly.
Okay.
But I think what you're saying is that should that fail, then they have to hook up, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Well, or they have to come to you for a variance. They have to go through a variance
Yeah.
process.
Yeah,
Which we don't have right now.
Correct.
right.
So we need to implement it.
I think we could design a variance process where somebody, this landowner in particular, could appear before you and seek this variance. And as part of that variance, much like we do in zoning circumstances, the council would say, that's fine, we'll grant the variance, subject to X, Y, Z conditions, and one of those conditions would be, I would recommend, to follow the regional sewer and water statute that says there's a health, annual health department
Yeah.
certification that says this is functioning, that it's okay.
And we also give them a deadline. Like, yeah, by so many years, that has to be replaced.
Right. Right. And you could, and again, this is getting a little more creative with it, you could you could charge a subsequent connection fee, so it's $100 a year or something that goes into a fund that then pays the tap fee over 10 years, or, something, you're not limited in that sense.
Right,
I really think
okay.
you've got some flexibility here to craft
The process that the county works, so if this septic fails, he'll have to go get a permit to put in a new one, and they'll tell him, no, you're within 300 feet, you have to connect. Or if he decides to remodel and move his septic again, you right back at the same point, he'll have to come back to us to ask for a variance or connect.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
inclined to move forward. with that. What does everybody think?
yeah.
I think a variance process is appropriate. Because to me, telling someone, like, even if it fails, like you said, if you have to add a pump plus connection fees, I mean, monthly payments, and it's only a limited number of properties that could even matter to, so.
It is, admittedly, it's a little superfluous because it's a very limited subset of potential properties. But, you talk to the health department, I think, when you talk about septics and municipal boundaries, they're not a fan of them.
Yeah.
And so even though it's a large property, this is that practical versus
Right.
what's power kind of thing.
Okay.
So it, at the very least, gives you a tool that you can use.
That's good.
Let's do it.
All right, I guess you'll come up with the language, we'll take a look at it.
Sounds good.
Final thing tonight, and I'm going to start with Alex before we get to Jill. Because it's connected. So Jill has an idea to present to you that we'd like your kind of a thumbs up or thumbs down. Do you want to proceed with it? And it has to do with the empty lot and the empty building, on Main Street. But I think part of that discussion is Alex bringing us up to speed and making some decisions on how we get full ownership of all of that property. Because we can't move forward with the wrapping the RFP until we have full ownership of that property. And that may take some time. So why don't you discuss where we're at with that process and what decision you'd like them to make to guide you. And then we'll have Jill tell us what we're gonna do, or some ideas of what we can do with that property.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. So following up on our conversation from the 3rd, I've had some discussions with a title company in the area with regards to just what's going on with those parcels over there. We've talked about how the tax records indicate that I&M is the owner of this, call it a gap parcel between the plat of the original town, that there are these lots here that you see along Vistula, and then this small 10-foot strip along the bank of the river that the town was deeded in 1996. So some preliminary work that the title company has done suggests that there may be a gap in title with regards to this gap parcel, meaning back in 1900, when that 10-foot strip along the riverbank was deeded to the Portland Monolith Cement Company, and then to the Bristol Power Company, and then to I&M, this area here that Mike is highlighting got left out of the legal description for it. And as a consequence, the and again, this is speculating a bit here because we haven't had the title work done to really definitively say what I'm saying is true. So these are kind of educated guesses here, but over time, the auditor's records and I think even the town plats and the atlases that have showed up subsequent to 1904 have indicated that the platted lots that are part of the original plat of the town went all the way to the riverbank. Well, looking at the original plat, that doesn't appear to be true. And so there's been some assumptions made over time that that property, that little gap there was part of the parcels to the south, was owned by I&M, there's a lot of questions about it. So, with the title company's suggestion that there may be a gap there, what I've tried to evaluate is what the town's best approach would be in order to acquire clean title to the area that United Engineering has identified just to the north of the parcels that the town currently owns. So I believe that runs just to the property line at the Redbird, correct?
No, I'll draw it in. I'll try freehand.
Actually,
See
it's
how-
the Redbird parking lot.
It's this line here. It's not even drawing, is it?
No,
No.
Way to go. Oh, you know what? I'm not logged in, so it thinks I'm just a common user with no,
well.
with no fee that's been paid. Okay, now maybe I can draw. I'll draw a measure, why not? There you go. It's looking more promising. So we actually, what is with, oh, that's what I gotta do.
You're
It's
fine.
like really dumb. So that's,
Yeah, it goes over to the parking lot, that's Redbird.
well, yeah, it does, but what we have from United is a description of this. We'll
Mhm.
need to get a description of this. Sort of, that area. And then we'll have, and the Opera House is somewhat maybe willing for us to acquire this as well. So the town would own all of this and then all of this.
What about behind the Redbird? Isn't that considered town too?
No, this
No,
is,
that's
this is
theirs.
in dispute right here.
I was gonna say, from GIS, it says town.
No, right now it says I&M.
Oh, that says I&M too.
All of this says I&M, yeah.
So, part of the decision here depends on just how much of this property the town needs to have available to it as part of this development. In any event, there's two steps here that I think need to be performed. The first one is work from the title company. It's probably it's a couple $100 expenditure for the title company to do a title search in order to look at the land records and figure out who is appropriately, or who is the title owner of what's described as this gap parcel here. There's a legal description that shows up somehow, the auditor has a legal description of it. But the original title work just doesn't seem to have a lot of clarity there. So that would be a mission for the title company to undertake to figure out how it got there. The answer may be very clear. I mean, it may well be. There are errors in GIS all the time. They're usually not this significant, but they occur. And so there may just be a disconnect between what the auditor is seeing, what's reflected in the tax record here, and what the reporter has. I think the title search would clear that up. Once we have that available, the next step would be to clear title. And one of the ways that I think the town can do that would be through an eminent domain action. Again, part of the complexity of that process and part of the adversity in that process depends on, one, what the title search is gonna say. And then two, just how much of this property the town needs to acquire. I think it's a suitable eminent domain purpose. I don't think, there's no issue on the taking aspect of it. You do get into any eminent domain matters is gonna get into the issue of compensation. For, to the extent that INM has any interest here, we've had that conversation, at least with Jeff, INM's representative, and INM anticipates that there may be some judicial action in order to clear title here. And so our effort would be to work with them to make them not an adversary here. They want to be out of the east bank of the river on the east side of Division, and we want them out of the east side. So that, I think, is they're friendly to that extent. But the more difficult decision would be what's needed behind the Redbird, what's needed a little further down the riverbank. A benefit, I think, to the eminent domain action is that the town can really identify very specifically just what property it needs. So, for example, that legal description that United has prepared, the town can say, this is the property we wish to take for this purpose, and that doesn't impact the Redbird, it doesn't impact any of those properties further east on the riverbank. It would only affect that area there to the north of the lots of town.
Well, you know, like I said before, it's just so strange
Yeah,
that when you've got a building here that's from 1890, 1910, that is built over that line,
yeah,
there had to be some, and then to have a newer house built over the line as well, they had to have some kind of a documentation allowing for that to happen.
you'd think and you'd hope.
Yeah,
And
you would think
one-
so.
One reality here is a title search may well reveal.
Yeah,
I doubt it, because the town had a survey of what was called the 77-foot Bristol datum line done in 1996, and that's where that 10-foot strip came
Yeah.
from. So I don't anticipate that a title search is going to reveal that 77 datum foot is actually the northern edge of the original platted lots. I don't anticipate that those lines are gonna match. So, you know, if they did, I think that solves the problem, and we knock on IM's door and the issue's resolved. But I don't think it's gonna be that clear cut. So I think is step number one, there's more information that we need that we don't have in order to evaluate what the next step is. But I do think that the eminent domain, given the nature of the property, given the nature of the project, and it is going to, unless we can identify an owner, you know, that's probably going to be the best procedure available to the town to acquire that property. And more importantly, not necessarily to acquire that property from somebody, but in order to acquire that property to provide a subsequent developer clear title. Right.
well, and not only that, but it will help these other people pass the Redbird as well. Not only the Redbird, but I mean, it'll
Well,
give them some direction as
yeah,
to what they can do.
Dean's point, Dean was picking up on what I said last meeting, that at some point GIS may show the town of Bristol owning that.
Yeah,
Correct.
That's just because we're now paying taxes on it. So for sure, we want to go to the Redbird and say, hey, we're paying property, but we're not paying taxes.
no.
But you need to get this cleared up.
Mhm.
Okay? So, but first, let's get our project underway. So unless I hear anything different, we'll tell
Okay,
Alex to get the title company hired, and let's
Yeah.
take the first step towards
yep, let's get it going.
eminent domain.
There's no victim.
There's,
No.
yeah,
There's no victim. It's just,
And technically doesn't want it either, so.
yeah, like, nobody wants it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants it, the town needs it, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, okay, then I
Okay,
will,
so that process, let's say we're going to eminent domain, so I'm sure Judge Christopino will speed this one right along, but are we looking at what, January, or think we can get it done quicker?
well, the title search process isn't gonna take very long. The folks over here north are they're pretty good at what they do, and And so I would anticipate we'd have that information available relatively soon, and that'll tell us that'll tell us just what the issue is. There's two scenarios here, I think. If the title search doesn't identify a title owner, and it appears as though it was a gap in title created because, there was a title was severed 100 years ago, then the eminent domain process would essentially be by publication. There's all sorts of due process rights that are implicated in eminent domain. And so as part of that process, the town would have to publish an offer to the heirs of those who may have owned it however long ago, to see if anybody bites. And if nobody does, then that satisfies the notice requirement. We'd be able to go before Judge
We
Christopher.
wouldn't need to do any appraisals or anything like that that typically goes over that.
Yeah, well, and I think part of that depends on just what the title search determines. If there's no identifiable property owner, then, yeah, I think the town as part of that process offers what it perceives to be the fair market value. And, the fair market value of that strip, it really has no value other than to the town. And,
Yeah, because it's landlocked, basically.
it's landlocked, you can't access it, and it's bounded on all sides by the town's property, save for the parking lot behind the Redbird. So, I think the town can assign its value at that point as part of that offer process. Again, a lot of the variables here being that we don't have an identifiable owner, we need to publish a notice that says whoever may own this will pay $100 for it. So I think the assessor's office has that listed at like a $3,800 appraisal or assessed value.
Well, it doesn't speak well of the assessor's ability to assess, so I'm sure that's a mistake.
Well, it is.
Generally do better.
We keep in mind that this tax parcel also has, and I'm not sure how far west of Division it goes.
Oh, that's right, it goes
that as well.
quite a
Either
bit.
side.
Yeah, it goes quite a ways up here.
Right. So that's contemplated as part of that assessed value as well. So
Okay. So December, did you actually answer the question?
That's a safe, I think it's safe, that's reasonable.
December, so if we get the RFP out November, October, November, we could be January. We could have this available to us until maybe spring. Before anybody really starts wanting to do something on the site.
I think, yeah, and I really think the title work will show how complicated the condemnation process will be, and so it could be very straightforward. It could also be very complicated. So when that information's available, then I think we'll be in a much better position to know what that timeline looks like. The timeline for the action on Lawrence property was February to June, I think is when the deed was available.
Yeah.
So that was technically uncontested project. Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, it was in process at the time.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So with that background then, Jill's got some ideas on what we might do with that property in this interim period. And if you like these ideas, we can proceed with that along with the RFP and tell us what you've got, Jill. Fine. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to find it.
No.
Done, Alex.
Time for me.
Time, Jill.
So about a month ago, I was fortunate to go to Providence and to a Congress of New Urbanism conference. One of the main topics they talked about was incremental development. So learning more about that, I had a conversation with Ray Caldwell with the Community Foundation of Elkhart County. And he likes to, like, what's happening, what's going on, and he references this empty lot as Pippi's Stockings Landing or something. And so we sort of laugh about that. And he says, and you guys bought the other building next door? I said, yes. He says, why aren't we doing something with it now? And I was like, I don't know. So we really had a really great conversation, and he was throwing some things out there, which then sparked my creativity and got me a little excited actually. So with that building, from what we just heard from Alex, we have some time, maybe 12 months. If we could maybe move something in this building that Mike's laying out right here. Something similar to maybe a rise and roll,
Yes.
right? They just need a storefront. They don't- Well, I'll sit down. They don't
Now I
need
know
a
what to
kitchen.
get you for Christmas.
Or the vanilla creamery, vanilla bean creamery, I think it's, once again, you know, they probably won't need a kitchen depending on what they're selling. Something low barrier, something that, one, I think gets our community a little excited. They start to see some economic progress in that spot. Also, I know we've had some concerns with no parking, sort of show them maybe how this will work and the positive things that I think we can bring temporary to this location. I know the RDC cannot lease out a building, so doing some work maybe then becomes the town's property. Lease, maybe we don't charge them a lot of lease, but enough to cover, you know, the utilities, whatever, you know, the council would decide. We're not doing it for a profit, we're doing it just to bring something into that building for a time. The other thing, is I'm a visual person. So think of the side, the west side of that building. You cut a hole in the side, you have like a little walk-up window. Let's say it's rise and roll, you know, in the morning, you get your cup of coffee, you get your donut, your muffin, grab your breakfast sandwich. We have some seating out there. I mean, I wasn't at the homecoming unfortunately, but I heard that spot was phenomenal for watching fireworks, right? So have some seating out there for people to enjoy the river. Maybe Saturday mornings, maybe one day during the week. We have a farmer's market in the other open area. So we start to get foot traffic. We start to bring businesses in. Let's just say rise and roll takes us up on this opportunity. They do well because they don't have a location anywhere on this side of the county.
Yeah.
Maybe that also moves an opportunity for them to move into the building that is to come. So if you guys are interested in reaching out to a couple of those that I presented to you to see if they'd be interested in a 12-month lease. I think 12 months could be practical. Maybe it's a 9-month lease, whatever we determine at a low cost to them to get them here.
I like the idea of a farmer's market, and that way we wouldn't have to transfer any property to the town. It's still under the RDC as a one unit. You know, something like that.
So it actually have to go to town anyways,
Well, I'm
eventually.
just gonna ask that question for the RFP, would it be better to have everything under one ownership then?
I mean, yes, and we want to take a look at whether we want it all under the RDC umbrella or all under the town's umbrella.
Mhm.
The RDC tends to have a lot more flexibility when it comes to development of property
Right.
than the town does. And so it's easy enough, I mean, it's almost an administrative function, to get a transfer between the two. But I would think so. Unified title would be better.
So if we left it on the RDC, could we still pursue this?
Yeah, I think so. Anytime you're dealing with property interests, conveying anything more than, you know, just the right to use, if you're,
Yeah.
you know, a pop-up could be on a license arrangement as opposed to a bona fide lease. But there's statutes gonna govern a lot of, if the town wanted to do it, there's a notice provision, there's a, you know, a fair market rent concerns, there's all sorts of restrictions that go into leasing general municipal property, that I think the RDC may be exempt from. But I need to take a look at that.
That being said, if we're not charging any lease payments, we can get away with keeping the RDC. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that's probably the preferred vehicle. Yeah, I think you would have, my recollection is, I mean, especially if it's a for-profit tenant, the town would have issues renting it for free.
Gotcha.
They could always make a donation.
I was gonna say, you could, yeah,
Hey, why
be a
not?
required contribution, yeah.
Yeah,
To one of the not-for-profits, it could be, or the town park, that's a.
or the
There-
HUD.
There can be ways, I wouldn't say at this point that, no, there's nothing you can do on that spot. I don't think that's true, but I would want to be intentional in
Yeah.
how we want to approach it, because there would be different standards.
I think Joe said it well, the intent is not to make money at this spot, the intent is to start generating. Excitement about what can happen.
And some foot traffic.
So I've heard there's floor issues, there's roof issues, the town owning it, like someone in there, are there any ADA issues, like compliance?
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any floor or roof issues. I was in the building, I didn't see any leakage happening, I think the roof was repaired recently.
Okay.
Floor seemed to be okay.
I think it was Ken Jones said the floors were pretty off, and that's why he wasn't interested in it. That's why I was just wondering if there's anything that has to be done to it to even get it to a
I think
space where
something you can go in there.
Only that, but
set up
building
a
insurance.
Farmer's market or. I don't
Insurance
know about 30.
responsibility is a whole different thing.
I don't know about that, but
But yeah, like I said, insurance responsibility is a whole nother thing too.
We have it insured right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do we have it insured for the possibility of the use?
Well, they would have to get probably rental insurance.
But we can't rent
we'll ask that question.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, it just, as long as the liability from the town's covered, I think it's a good idea. I mean, I don't see why not. It's just sitting there.
I agree.
Mike, do you want me to give you a couple highlights on what that process would look like, and perhaps how title should be handled, so that it can you get some flexibility to work on it?
Yeah.
Maybe that'll help the idea flow.
That would help before we go talk to anybody. Yeah,
Can we even put a couple picnic tables in that? I mean, now we've got. Just put a couple picnic tables in the lot also as well.
that would be my vision.
People may
some
want to
seating
eat
out
their
there.
lunch there or, they go to the park all the time to eat lunch.
And as long as the lease doesn't interfere with the,
The RFP,
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be the only other thing.
Okay.
the RFP is in its final review by JPR, we might have a look at that. In August, the first meeting in August, perhaps, that's also your rezoning for the Wilhelm Farm. There's only 4 audience participants at the County Plan Commission meeting. I don't know what to expect here. There's only 2 or 3 neighbors, should be a quick meeting, but if 50 show up, it might not be.
Yeah, I don't want to interfere with RFP by any means, but, we've been on almost a year,
Yeah.
so I'm like, man, if we have a small window where we can bring something in there.
Yeah.
A small step for something larger for the
Yeah.
future.
It's a good idea.
Okay.
That's all I had. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Joe. All right. Kathy, anything tonight?
Not this evening.
Alex, anything additional?
Nothing further from me.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
All right, any questions about, our next meeting, which is Thursday night? Any other comments or questions?
George will be here in my steed.
That's right, okay.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
That
All in
was next
favor?
on the schedule. Aye.
All right.
Yeah, got a question for you.
Sometimes the Wilhelm Farm.
Yes.